We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Peace Talks. This is my virtual table to serve up some spiritual food for you to nourish your soul and to provision your storehouse, your inner storehouse of peace within. Because I will tell you, when you are filled up with peace within, you become a channel of it. And when you are a channel of peace, you bring that everywhere, you overflow, you multiply, and you spread that stuff wherever you go. That is the purpose here. That is why I am here to share of the peace that I have within. And if there are days where I'm not feeling at peace, I am going to share that with you as well, because that's what we are doing here as a community, coming together and truly growing, nourishing each other, lifting each other up, so that we are all the wave of pioneers that are being channels of peace in this world. So, good morning, everyone. Jessica, hi. And Kat from Toronto, good news in Canada. You guys are just about free of all of the stuff. Congratulations, and way to have patience, because God bless you all. You've been in it. So, yeah, 2 days ago, we were talking about the Jubilee year, the Grand Jubilee. And if you haven't watched that, you can go back and watch the first episode of Peace Talks. And today, I really wanted to go a little bit deeper into it, because there's so many golden nuggets about I don't know what it's called. It's the prophecy of the 7 years, the Shemitah, that then after 7 cycles of the Shemitah goes into the Yovel year, which is the Grand Jubilee. And isn't it interesting, quite frankly, that it falls in the same time that we are really seeing a lot of unrest in the world that we have known. We have known and talked about this in the Ascension conversation, on the daily tune-ins that I was doing for about, I don't know, 8 months, 9 months. We were talking about how this world is dismantling. These systems that have been built upon deception and manipulation are dismantling. We are now in it. We were really talking about the build up to it, kind of feeling the energy of it. And now we are living in the world where we are seeing a lot of what we have been feeling, what we have been knowing in prophecies. There's a lot of things converging. There's spiritual principles, there are spiritual prophecies, there are political not prophecies, but we've seen a lot of things ramping up in the political world where we kind of known it's unsustainable. There's been a lot of disclosure there. There's been a lot of disclosure in the medical systems. Like, all of our systems now are starting to be seen, and a lot of the deception that is underneath those systems, what some will call the matrix, whatever you want to call it. This isn't here. I'm not here to be that, to support that. But I do find that it's very interesting that a lot of this is now converging at the very time that we enter into this Jubilee year. So I really wanted to talk about this more as we move into this Jubilee year from a more sacred and a more spiritual standpoint, a more perspective. And if you remember, we were talking about the perspective of the pole switch. I kind of updated this a little bit, and coming into a place where we are finding our true north for the first time in humanity, as a collective, understanding that this mass awakening is taking us to a perspective of seeing things from the spiritual level. And when we see it from there and we operate from there, we flow down into a more natural, into a more inherent operating system, which has been inherently within us, but very deceptively hidden from us, so that we have been operating from the upside down, so to speak. I just did a reel on Instagram, and it came to me kind of like in the show Stranger Things. There's that world, the upside down, and it's the world of kind of darkness. And I don't want to make the assumption that the physical world is all dark. However, operating from there can feel very dark. It can feel very challenging because we are only then working with our five senses. So it has felt very challenging for many of us because it was an operating system that was completely opposite of how we are inherently created by the creator, by spirit itself, to operate in physical form. So we're coming into a higher perspective of being. So from that standpoint, that's what these peace talks are all about, taking the spiritual, the sacred perspective of everyday life. What are we seeing in life, and how do we look at it from a higher perspective, from a higher intelligence of spirit, and interpreting that. So not interpreting that, but truly translating that into a practical approach to life, because that's what we are figuring out. That's what we are learning. That's what, actually, we're not figuring it out. We are remembering. We are remembering how to live a practical life in physical form from that true north, from our spirit. So I got some note cards over here and some things. So as you know, I got my little emotional calibration ladder too, because that always comes in quite handy. So part of the Jubilee year, I'm just going to give you some bullet points, additional bullet points on it, because I kind of I glossed over or quickly gave you the overview of the Yovel year, the Jubilee year. And the beautiful thing about it is that in the Torah, it talks about debt being canceled. And aren't we seeing a little bit of that, And although it's controversial, but it's still in tune. There's still some credit that I see that is trying to be taken from, in a political stance of, oh, I'm going to relieve this debt. But spiritually, that is already our right. That is already our reward, our provision from the storehouse. So when I talk about the storehouse, I talked about it in the daily tune-ins, but in case you're new here or you're watching the recording, the storehouse is, if we know a physical storehouse, a physical storehouse is a place or a space that once you harvest all of your crops, you can can them and provision your storehouse so you have food, nourishment, sustenance over the darker months of winter. And we also have an inner storehouse. The inner storehouse is our spirit, and we are sustained and nourished from our spirit, from this inner storehouse. And when the storehouse is provisioned from our karmic efforts, from our karmic work here in this lifetime, and we bring that karma as well. It's a whole other conversation. But our storehouse is filled with the work that we are here to do. And on the spiritual journey and on this awakening process, we fill and nourish and provision our storehouse by all of the moments that we are living in love, in joy, and in peace. And we take deposits, we take withdrawals from the storehouse quite a bit when we live here. So if our storehouse is empty because we live in a perpetual operating system of being in fear, then we are empty spiritually. So this whole process of being in peace is to continually be depositing into our inner storehouse, so that when we come into a Yovel year, a Jubilee year, all of our karmic debt is erased. We have filled it up already. We have erased our karmic debt. We also see property is returned to the original owners. And when we think of property as far as a physical world, I don't know how that works in the physical world, but spiritually, if we what is our property? Our property is our own management, um, our own management of our multidimensional self. This is my property, my physical body, emotional, mental, and spiritual body, my being, my multidimensional being, your multidimensional being is your property. And we pull that back from that matrix, from those systems that have ensnared us. Some will say we have been enslaved in them, and it sometimes has felt like that. So when we take our property back, we pull out from the matrix that has kept us in fear, that divides us, that brings us into all of the ways that we have been perpetually in anxiety and overwhelm and fear and in shame. And we pull our attention away from there. Remember on the Peace Talks 2 days ago, we were talking about these two worlds that are going to become more and more distant, more and more divided. And it's a different divided that I'm talking about how collectively we have been. What I'm talking about is that old world is going to get more and more distance the more we pull our property back this year. And we put our effort, we put our attention somewhere else. We put our attention into the spirit, into God, universe, spirit, into nature, whatever calls to you. When we pull our energy out of there, we are then sustained, and we are then pulling away further and further from that world, and it will get more and more, it'll quiet down. It'll still be in existence, but because we have pulled our energy away from it, out of it, we have let go of all that sucks us into these lower dimensional emotions, and we take our energy away from the relationships, the places, the circumstances, the relationships, the people, all of the ways, the worlds, the systems. When we pull our energy away, that's what we have been working on in this past year. I'm just talking about the daily tune-ins, what we've been talking about with these waves of energy that come in, and letting go of the densities. That's what it means to pull out of that old world. And as the more we pull out, and I can speak so personally about this, the more that I've gotten away from the world, and geographically, I've literally done that. And also spiritually and emotionally, I have done that. I've pulled away from all of, the people that were sucking me dry, the situations, the world, the obligations. And at first it was extremely painful because I didn't know what to do when I didn't have all of this going on. The more we get into, when we, enter into an operating system of joy and peace, it's quite foreign. It's quite different. The quiet is almost a little bit terrifying because we have gotten so used to this noisy world, this heavy, dense world where it feels like you're walking through mud most days to get through the day. And then to move into this world. And now, after, and I say it's a year and a half because that's really how long I personally have been completely removed from from any world that I have known. Now my days are so are they're interesting because I just find myself wondering why it took so long to get here, why it took so long. And I know spiritually we all have our journey and all the things, but I'm like, why is this such a frightening place for us to move into? Why has it been that when someone says, I no longer want that world, I want to go to this world and live in a place of peace, why has that been diminished so much? Why has that been so judged? because it has been so ingrained to stay away from it. And now that I am here and I live majority of my days in peace, no matter what is going on, some days have been quite challenging to find that peace. But in the majority of my days being in peace, I think, wow, the fact that this has been so hidden has been quite a revelation to me. And that's why Peace Talks has been launched, has been birthed, so that we can give each other permission, we can support each other in truly letting go of all of the things that are keeping us out of peace. The other part of the Jubilee year is we have a clean slate. We have a clean slate. In the Torah, it talks about all slaves were set free. And if a slave chose to stay enslaved by their captors, really, then they were required to stay for the next 7 years, for the next Shemitah cycle. So that's something, quite frankly, to pay attention to, because our slates are set free when we choose which world. We've talked about the choice points. With every moment that we find ourselves down here, we have a choice point. Do I want to keep this thing, this person, this not opportunity, this circumstance that is keeping me enslaved? Or do I want to let it go? Do I want to walk in the direction of the new world, the new earth, 5D, the heaven on earth, the Jubilee year, whatever you want to call it, whatever most calls to your heart to understand or to believe in? You want to walk in that place. That choice point is you let go of that thing that ties, that ensnares you. Otherwise, you're going to stay there, and you're going to have to live in that world because you've chosen to hang on to a thing or to a person, to a relationship, to a job, to a circumstance that maybe you're afraid to walk away from because you have the ego that says, I'm afraid, so I'm going to give you lots of logical excuses, but you find yourself continually being sucked dry. You are then in these terms that we're talking about, you're enslaved by that circumstance. So if you choose to walk in the direction of this Jubilee year and walk into heaven on earth, it is going to feel very foreign. It is going to freak out the ego that is used to, that is fed from those lower vibrational emotions, from those circumstances, from the drama of life. It's how we've learned. That's how we've sustained ourselves in most cases. And through this awakening journey, we have learned step by step to become more bold, to become more courageous, to become more powerful, to choose. And as we choose to walk into this Jubilee year and see it with our own eyes, to feel it, to walk into circumstances and new communities, new jobs, new work, new circumstances that actually feed us, at that point, then we are free. The slate is clean. We get to start all over. One of the things that Bud and I have been talking about. Oh, it's actually kind of chilly here today, and it's been raining and cloudy. And I've been this is a total sidebar note, but I think for 3 months straight, 4 months, I don't even know, for many, many months now. This is going to sound very, very like completely illogical, but it has been nothing but blue skies and blinding intense sun. And there's so many days have been like, the sun is angry. It blazes here and then it bounces off the water. And like in the afternoon, it's just full sun. And there has been no break from it. And although I've so appreciated all of it, at the same time, I've just like, there have been days where I'm like, man, I just want a cold, rainy, cloudy day. And today we got it. And it's been so nice and it's been chilly. And so Bud made this yummy antioxidant tea, and it just feels good to like just sip on a warm cup of tea. But what I was saying is, when Bud and I left, when we left Austin, we didn't put anything in storage. We didn't, like the whole idea, like we burned all bridges. We were like, we committed to this journey. We let go of everything, everything. And there have been moments in this last year and a half when I haven't been in peace, when I've been in anger at myself, being like, what were we thinking? Like, we don't have lamps, like all the stuff, right? That really doesn't matter. But now that we have chosen to go back to California, and we're allowing that process to be a mystical process. We're not making it happen. We don't have a date. We are allowing the flow of the storehouse to present itself. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. But now that we know we're going back, I'm like, man, we're going back to like nothing. When we get a place, we don't have like a bed, we don't have a mattress. And there have been moments in time where I'm like, that was so dumb. That was so dumb. And immediately my ego wants to tell me it's dumb. But man, that's how I know how much work has gone in to be sustained by the storehouse in these 18 months, whatever it's been. Because almost immediately it's like, no, you got a clean slate. And what we've come to, in talking about this, what we've come to realize is when Bud and I blended our families, he came with a whole lifetime of stuff. I came with a whole lifetime of stuff from other marriages, from other relationships. So we had this this collaboration of many different relationships. So we had all this energy from other people that were in our home, and some things I liked, and some things I was like, oh, that's practical to hold on to it, but I don't really like that. I wouldn't choose that now. And now we're looking online, and we're looking at like Facebook Marketplace at like old Pyrex stuff. Like I want old, good stuff. And we have a completely clean slate to start all over in our physical lives. But that couldn't have come if we had not removed and let go of everything, the things that were like the bondage that we had of stuff, of our emotional stuff, of anything that was distorting us from our spiritual path. This 18 months prepared us. It allowed us to clear it all, to come down to a clean slate. So for me, walking into this Jubilee year, it's the most exciting thing because I don't really know all that means, but from what I can practically put together, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically, I have a clean slate to step into and be and do and have whatever it is I want. That is freedom. That's what the Jubilee year brings. Complete and utter freedom for us to start over, to build our heaven on earth. How exciting is that if you really think about it? So whatever, not even think about it, if you feel about it. So whatever it is that still binds you, that still holds you in bondage, what is it you need a sabbatical from? This Jubilee year is actually the Shemitah year. The 7th year is the sabbatical year. Then we move into the celebratory year, the celebration, the festival, the feast. But here's the thing. Here's the big thing. Something I read was the Jubilee year is when work comes to a halt. All eyes turn, to God, but to nature. All eyes turn to nature. The people would rely on the provisions of God. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have 1 year of the Shemitah year, the 7th year. It doesn't make sense that final year would give sustenance for the 7th year, the Jubilee year, as well as the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. So the last year of the Shemitah cycle nourished and sustained actually 3 years. The mind can't comprehend that. And yet, it was written in spiritual texts. It was written in the laws of creation that when we walk in faith of this cycle, that we will be fully sustained. So what is it that you need to have a sabbatical from? I ask you that question in the most loving way, because some of you have relationships that really are calling for a sabbatical. Some of you have jobs that are hard to give up. I get it, because you think that's sustaining you, and yet it's sucking you dry. And you really, truly, your spirit is saying you need a sabbatical. Some of you have circumstances, maybe family members, where you think, I need to take a sabbatical, but it doesn't make sense to the mind, because it says, but this is family. But if it's family that's sucking you dry, you are in bondage. Some of you are in situations, stuck in a medical condition, or not a condition, but in the medical system, that you just need to step away from and take a sabbatical from. I'm not giving you medical advice, but just hear what I'm saying. And here's what I know about this. I'm not sitting here. I don't come to this table talking about things I haven't chosen, I haven't done on my own. I come here with experience saying, I survived it. And it was scary at times. But every time I was scared, I just kept going to faith, which put me into peace. And the other thing I thought of today, and I'm going to come back to the sabbatical thing, but if you remember in the daily tune-ins, I did this drawing here, and it was kind of like the waves, the pioneer journey, was what I called it. And it's kind of like the waves of awakening, of those who are awakening. So we have the 3D realm, the physical realm, which is those who are like, they're freaking out. They're like, bah, what's happening? My world's crumbling. And they're still very much anchored into that 3D, into the five senses. They think Armageddon is coming. They're afraid. And then you have the people that are waking up, okay? And they're going the mass awakening, and they're going in pursuit of a new way. And then there's that fourth dimensional phase, where this is where the release of all of the emotional and mental baggage comes. This is where we sit and we take a look at everything that is keeping us in fear and lack and scarcity and anger and all of the things. And this is where we release it, the great purge. So this is where the chronic emotional pain is dissolved. And what I mean by that is, if you think of chronic pain is something that is there every day, every moment. And we have those that sit in the 3D realm in chronic physical pain, but also chronic emotional pain. And when we choose to pioneer and go into a new dimension, into a new reality, just looking, this isn't working anymore. This is too painful. I need to go in. This is where we purge all that brought us chronic pain. Sitting here in these last few years in my own journey is where I sat with just wave after wave after wave of letting go, layer after layer of anxiety. That's when I realized how much anxiety I had carried with me for a very, very long time, for most of my adult life. The amount of anxiety that I've had to work through, and it came it came in my face as we left the States and started on this journey that I've been on. This has been so much more than, I'm going to travel to Europe and and do fun things. Hasn't been that. This has been the 4D part of this, where I've released all of that. I say all of it. I think it's all of it, but then a new wave of energy comes. I'm like, whoa, here's another layer. But this is where the chronic anxiety fell. Y'all, I haven't felt anxiety in months, which feels like lifetimes. I think it was back in Ukraine when the last time I really felt that's freedom. That's freedom. So this is where we release all of the chronic pain. Doesn't mean then when we move into the higher realms of the fifth dimensional, the heaven on earth, the Jubilee year is when we can step into, we have the ability, after all of this is purged and cleared, we have the ability to step into heaven on earth. Now, it doesn't mean that there is no pain there. It doesn't mean that you don't feel these lower emotions. These are how we know we're human. This is what flags us, like, hey, something's off here. When you feel angry, what is this? But instead of it being chronic, it's acute. So just like you have chronic physical pain and then you have acute physical pain when you fall and break your ankle, hurts like hell. You go to, you go to the hospital, you take care of it. It hurts for a little bit while it heals, and then when it's healed, it's done. That's what pain feels like, and it's just acute pain. It's these waves that pass through to show us what we need to see. But because we've been through this process, this awakening journey, this is when we understand then how to let these things go, how to move through these waves. So this past year, with the intensity of the solar energies, of the energies ramping up and really helping us purge all of this, we've become seasoned. We've become seasoned in allowing those waves to go. So we won't have as much of that the more you stay in this year. This year has been this year and a half is as I was looking about the sabbatical year, I do believe that I have been one of the pioneers who have been kind of leading the wave. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm just saying I know in my spirit, I was one of the ones that had to go kind of in the first few waves of this to understand the sabbatical year, so that I could come here with you truthfully and say, trust that you will be nourished and you will be sustained for this year when you choose to step through the door to this Jubilee year, and know that you will be sustained. I have been for 18 months in a sabbatical year. I quit my jobs. I haven't had I know my paychecks coming in job for almost, 2 years now. I know that I have been sustained and nourished emotionally and physically and mentally and spiritually, because I sit here in so much peace. Were there times that I was in some fear? Will I be sustained? Will I get through another month? Sure. But in those months, I had sat in this fourth dimensional frequency enough to know that I can move through this anxiety. I can move through this fear. I can let this pass. And once it passes, I do the practices that get me into peace. I sit down with a journal and I say, what's next, Spirit? Speak to me. And in that place of peace, something always came. I was always given direction. Excuse me. I was always given direction. I was always given guidance that led me to something that nourished me or sustained me physically, mentally, or emotionally, and of course, spiritually. I was being sustained spiritually because I had already chosen to walk through the initial doorway that led into this Jubilee year. So please trust this process. If there is something, not if, we all have something that requires a sabbatical year. Just give it a rest, let it go, and trust and put all eyes on the Spirit, which is here, and that will speak to you in your own unique way. And it will nourish you and it will sustain you. So trust that if you choose to walk through and be in this sabbatical year with me, that we will celebrate, because every step where you're like, oh my God, I was just nourished. I don't know where that came from. Oh my gosh, Badette, I had this miracle came through. Somebody reached out and offered me this, and I took it and I was sustained. That is the mystical way of the Jubilee year. That is the mystical way of spiritual living, of living from that true north. That's when you become heaven on earth. Heaven on earth is the mystical way. It's miraculous. It surprises you. It makes you giggle. It makes you laugh out loud. The amount of times, I mean, Bud and I have conversations, I will honest to God say all the time, where we're like, do you remember like when we were in Ukraine, how scary, like, do you remember how scary it was? And then all of a sudden, like that happened. It was so, this journey has been so magical. And now when I can look back, I can see all the small, subtle things that were mystical coincidences that showed me I was nourished, that showed him he was nourished, and had him trust the spiritual path even more, because he's a practical guy. I've always, been a little bit more, free spirited and like, let's trust the universe. And he likes that about me, but there's that practical side of him is like, well, let's have a little bit of a plan. But this journey alone has solidified and anchored him into this process. So as we enter this Jubilee year, we're excited as hell, because we know we've got nothing but goodness to receive. We are ready for the actual collective celebration, the collective Jubilee. And as we collect and commune in community with all of you, I will be cheering you on and saying, step away from it, take a sabbatical from it. You will survive. You will not go any lower than you can handle. And when you get to that lowest level in your face, like I've told him, like we jumped off the cliff, and there were times where my face was skimming along that ground, but Spirit never let me hit the ground. Never. It always showed me it was there. And the only reason I got that close to the ground where I was skimming was because my own fear was standing in the way of me seeing how sustained I was. The faith that I have in this sabbatical year and moving into the celebration and the joy of putting all eyes on what goodness is the Storehouse going to deliver for me is to my core. And I bring that here, and I'm going to keep bringing that on these peace talks. So I'm excited, y'all. I think this is the beginning of something great, and I think it's going to be the beginning of something amazing that we're even going to see in physical form. This goes beyond the energetics. This goes beyond what we've been talking about on the daily tune-in. There is still energy to be talked about. There is still energy to be tuned into. And there's also now the physicality of watching our work, all of the work of these last 7 years come into our eyesight. We are going to hear magic. We are going to see it. We're going to feel it, and we're going to celebrate it. That's what this year is about, and I'm excited to do this with you. So I'm going to anchor this in for us before I end this. So if you've come to this table and you have received some spiritual food and some nourishment, I simply ask that you consider giving. In return, I put some links in the chat if you'd like to consider donating to myself and this platform to keep us sustained, to keep us nourished and filled, so that I can keep coming here and bringing nourishment and spiritual food to you. I would be so grateful, and my spirit would be so happy as well. Either way, Spirit says, honey, you are so nourished, and I know that I am. So let's anchor all of this in, okay? Let's anchor in the bravery, the courage it takes to take a sabbatical and turn all eyes to the true north, which is your spirit within, okay? So if you would, just wherever you are, if you can, just simply get quiet. If you can close your eyes if you can. If not, just sit with me And just know that in this place, the sun is coming through like so perfectly through through the shears here. And in this sunlight, what I know is the light of this moment, the light of this nourishment, the light of this spiritual food simply nourishes every part of us all the way down to our spirits. And as we tap into that spirit, we know that that is the unique I am presence that spirit gave to you. And we bring each of our unique I am presences to this circle, to this space. And as they come together, they expand and multiply, surrounding our entire planet, all of humanity, every sentient being on this planet. And we fill this planet with light, with peace. Because when we fill it, when we are channels of peace, we bring that peace wherever we go. And where two or more are gathered, we expand that peace and we send it to every single heart and soul in and on this planet, including our planet itself. Mother Earth, thank you, thank you, thank you for sustaining us and nourishing us. And from the consciousnesses that we are, we then nourish you, Mother Earth, through our spirits with so much love and with so much peace. And we see that nourishment growing and sustaining all of humanity in all ways. And whatever it is in our individual lives that needs a sabbatical, I ask for all of the sustenance of courage, of boldness, of bravery, to let it go and to allow new space, new growth to come into our realities. And all of that growth is sustained and nurtured by faith and belief that where there is space, there is the room for newness, for new sustenance, abundant sustenance, healthy sustenance. And we accept and receive that sustenance with so much grace and so much ease. I release this intention into the beautiful space of creation, of nature. For I know it is already sown and it is already being nurtured, because our I am presences are together and nurturing it right here, right now. And that continues 24/7 until we see that in our physical reality. I let this go. I let it be, because I have faith and I know it's already done. And so it is. Abracadabra, open the storehouse. Thank you all for being here today. I will see you on Thursday at the same time. And if you are here on the recording, just know that you have helped co-create this very episode. I don't know what it's called, episode. I'm calling them episodes because it feels like an episode of peace. So thank you for being here and for co-creating this beautiful space. So much love to you. Mwah.